Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Let the Right One In. A great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, all my fears came true in this episode, just because where things were with Claire, it's like, right, the moment she's telling Peter, all right, you got to do exactly what I said, I figured it'd be kind of like, right, we went down this with the Chris route, what happens next? You need to follow my instructions. So I was like, for one, she's not going to just completely like look over the fact is that, hey, you killed a person that she was in love with, but also it's just like, right, this is her one person who did everything for Peter over all these years, been her ride or die person, her person to kind of go into hell with, and you took that away from her. So obviously she's not going to be too keen on that, but it's like, right, she meets Eleanor and it's like, cool, I can help you. And you could tell just that look in her face where it's just like, right, she recognizes like, right, it is a child. I'm doing that too, but still it's a means to an end. So, right. And I love all the dots getting connected. Peter, like Eleanor being like, wait, meeting Peter being like, wait, haven't I met you before? It's like, yeah, I've been getting that feeling too. Hey, yeah, we met each other at that thing. It's like, oh yeah, remember when was this? 10 years ago. It's like, yo! And then it's also like, yeah, well, was there anyone weird? It's like, well, yeah, this guy, he asked for her address. It's, yeah, like Ellie was attacked like a few days after she got home. It's like, at home. It's like the same thing for Peter. I'm like, they're connecting the dots. It's like, right, so they were bitten by the same creature. I mean, they saw his face, but they probably wouldn't be able to identify him. I mean, God knows where the hell he is out there in the world. I'm sure he's still out there. But either way, it's like, oh, they're connecting that dots. And Mark even being like, you know, we met before. And Claire's like, what? It's like, yeah, 10 years ago, I came here and you said that your brother had died. She's like, huh. At the time, that's what I thought because my dad didn't tell me until the death. I'm like, the serendipity. And now everyone's on board being like, because Mark realized last episode, he recognized, not last episode, episode 8. He realized he recognized her from the picture that he recognized Claire. Like I love that connect because he probably like, right. It's a very vivid moment in his life because it was 10 years ago. It's like when all the craziness happened, like probably everything leading up to Elizabeth's death probably is ingrained in his mind. He's probably remembers the faces of, I would assume, yeah, he remembers the faces and most likely the names of everyone he ever killed. He knows what he did. I mean, once again, they were bad people. He went after sex offenders. So there's that part of you that's like, there's that vigilante in all of us that's kind of like, yeah, you know, you went after shitty human beings. The world's kind of better off. But then there's also the part of you that's like, right, murders, you know, generally speaking, even in the vigilante sense, taking justice into your own hands isn't a good thing, you know? So it's like, yes, we have there's that duality. There's a part of your brain that's like, right, like, yeah, I recognize it's not good to do that, but it's also like, because it's also a fictional story, I could say like, fuck those people, who cares, you know? But it's also like, yeah, in a reasonable sense, it's like, right, you wouldn't want someone just going out there killing people willy-nilly, regardless of what they've done, you know? So it ends up being that situation. So, but you could, like I said, from the very beginning, Claire, because Eleanor is even more of a special subject, because it's like, right, the fact is that Peter has to pass the virus on to someone else. But it makes it even special because the virus is directly I guess it's almost implying that anytime Eleanor or Peter make a different vampire, they're passing on a diluted version of the virus. So it's not the exact same virus, but inside of Peter, it's, you know, him and Eleanor share the exact same virus because it came, like, I don't know if it even works like that. Like I was saying, like whether it gets diluted the moment it's passed from one person, because it's no longer just their virus and DNA. It's been mutated with your own genes and stuff. So they're passing on a bit of themselves. So the virus inside of Eleanor would probably closer match. Well, no, because it probably wouldn't even closely match the one inside of, you know, or let's use Chris and Peter, for example. Peter, him and Chris won't have the exact same virus because it's Peter passing the virus on to Chris. But if he made Chris and another vampire, those two vampires would share it. Because like I said, I think it gets diluted, you know, moment it gets passed down and passed down and passed down. So the only match will be those who came from the same source would be this only matches. I could be like completely misconstruing it, but why she think, I can only assume that's why she said Eleanor is special in that regard. Cause like Chris was like, yeah, one thing, but it's like, right, Eleanor, because also the virus has also been inside of Eleanor, like roughly speaking, the same amount of time. Chris was only made like, you know, in a small frame amount of time. Eleanor and Peter have had the virus inside of them for over 10 years. So that probably like makes them very compatible in that capacity as well. And that probably helps when it comes to all of it. So, but then we get into the very complicated aspect of things where, Claire is like, right, to do what we need to do, because Matthew was going to take care of Naomi regardless, but now it's like, right, now that he's going, you have to fill in those responsibilities. Not only are you going to have to get food for your daughter, you also have to get food for Peter, because that's what Matthew did, but also Matthew was going to kill Naomi after he dealt with you. So, but I'm also curious, like, how Claire thought that was all going to work out. Like, right, he goes take care of Naomi. I guess when he comes back to get Eleanor, they'll kill Mark, and it's just, that'll be that. I guess it's like, that was going to be their game plan, because it's like, because also she was not in a forgiving mood. It's like, right, you killed Matthew. And she even said this to Peter, who was having his reservations, because it's like, it's one thing, because it's like, that was also the thing. He made Chris so there was a personal connection. She didn't account for the fact that him having a personal connection to Eleanor, because it's like, right, we were both in the same boat. We met all those years ago. Once again, in her case, the crappy serendipity of it all. But I think also Peter feels bad because it's like, she's a kid. Because she's younger than he is. He's 15, she's 12. It makes it even worse. It's like, she's younger than me. And like doing what you were going to do to Chris. Like, it's just like, if you can just like minimize as much pain as it. But it's like, right. Everyone's made sacrifices for you. It's time for you to kind of do the same, which I'm like, dude, that's kind of like, that is effed up. Like, it is like you are putting it on Peter. It's not like, obviously he didn't ask to be what he is. He didn't necessarily ask for all this to start. Your father to go down the route he did to properly make a cure, you know? And yes, Mark kind of threw it in Eleanor's face to some extent, but he felt bad about it too. So once again, that even more direct parallel of like, right, you have to make some sacrifices of your own after I've done everything I've done for you. Because even Claire's like, wow, I've done this for a few months. You've been at it for 10 years. She's like, wow, a few months nearly broke me. And it's like, yeah, but Mark had to keep going, not only for his sake, and for Eleanor's sake, but also like, right, his wife literally sacrificed herself to keep them going. So that's what, well, kept him going, you know. He's held on to that hope and that belief that there was some cure out there. And obviously it's like, for him, it's like, right, I never thought about attacking this from a different point of view. Yes, he had the science perspective of, right, he heard from a doctor, maybe we should find the thing that bit Eleanor and then we can devise a cure from that. Well, that's been rotating in his and Liz's mind the entire time, until Liz died, about like, right, this could be a possibility. Well, obviously he lost track of the creature, wouldn't be able to track it down. So there's that. But it's like, oh, Claire's like, right, I had the same, well, because she had suggested that from the beginning, but I don't know whether Arthur never bothered looking for the creature because he thought it was a lost leader, like it was never gonna pan out to anything, or whether he actually did try, but I'm assuming he gave up, whereas Mark didn't, because he went at it from like purely like a scientist point of view of, I'll make the cure myself, I'll try and create it myself, whereas Mark is like, no, I'm gonna hunt down this creature and then we can, he was kind of thinking step one, they were already on the step two, but it's somewhere in the middle ground is where they needed to meet for the purposes of a cure, so that's the interesting thing of it. So there's that aspect. But now it's like, right, you got to kill Naomi because it's only a matter of time before because she's already getting suspicious. She's talking to Isaiah. Isaiah's like, yeah, me and Eleanor will never talk again. And she's like, what's that about? She can't figure it out. And she has her buddy from, isn't her buddy from like Interpol being like, hey, I'm going to look into this guy for you. It's like, yeah, a friend of mine, anytime some guy ghosted her, she sent like the U.S. Marshals busting down his door, finding out where he was at. I could do the same thing for you. I'm like, oh, please don't. I was like, because now you're going to know that he's at Claire's. And ultimately, it's like, yeah, this boyfriend or not of yours is kind of complicated. You said your ex was a drug dealer. And this guy's got some secrets of his own because that number he gave, yeah, it's a burner. And he turned the location off. It's like, sounds like someone who's got something to hide. You're like, oh boy. And then it's like, right, he went to Claire Logan. And that's when, for Naomi, it's like, wait, what? Now it's like, okay. Because especially she heard from Isaiah, it's like, right, what's going on with Eleanor? It's like, right, Eleanor's trying to keep me safe. And obviously for Naomi, she's like, I can't piece that together. What that does that mean? You know? I hope she didn't immediately take that as is Mark actually not a good person or something? But it's like, but probably like, what kind of stuff are they mixed up in? You know? And especially with Naomi saying the lines of, you know, you will always have one person that will never disappear on you. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Naomi, don't say the, oh man, I'm one day away from retirement line. I'm like, you didn't say a word. I was like, she's dead. I was like, damn it, I don't want her to die. Especially because Mark is the one that has to do it. I was like, please don't do it. Because for one, he's already killed Isaiah's dad. Two, it's like, do I really want to take another parent from her? Like, yes, this is about saving my daughter, but Eleanor's kind of made it clear, like, she doesn't want him to do whatever it takes for the purpose. Because also, you know you're in the wrong here because you didn't even want to tell Eleanor the truth about it. But for her, it's like, because Eleanor's happy for the first time because she's like, oh my God, like, even if there's no guarantee this cure thing will happen, but it might. And she's hopeful for the first time in 10 years because her dad's the one that's been grasping at hope. And now it's here. It's like, right, do I want to take that away from my daughter now? It's like, well, I'm one step away. All I have to do is kill Eleanor. But it's like, kill Naomi. It's like, right, your point. Like, it's a good thing you didn't because if you killed Naomi, it would all be for naught because for the next few months, because it's like, oh, it wouldn't take years, but it'd take months. Eleanor would still, you be dead. She'd be used as a lab rat. And Zeke would have been filled in about stuff, but I don't think, at least in the context of the episode, Mark didn't tell Zeke everything. He met him at Liz's grave and was like, all right, so this is what's what. I found the woman. She can potentially cure Ellie, but when it's all said and done, especially after he has to do what he's going to do, it's like, I'm going to confess for what I did because regardless of why I did it, and even if Ellie gets cured, she won't, it doesn't erase all my sins. You know, that's something I have to repent for. So if he's able to get her cured and then, you know, for him, it's like, right, maybe my soul can be saved. And Ellie only killed people in my defense last episode. So I think for him, it's still like, I take all that on. So she'll live her life. She'll probably be able to repent. She'll be able to save her soul. So for him, he's like, I need to pay for what I've done, especially if it meant killing Naomi. Because he realized, like, right, Naomi's not a bad person. Because he regrets the Frank thing. Like, yeah, Frank was a drug dealer. And, you know, once again, that's a whole, I talked about that before. That's a whole complicated conversation in its own right of, hey, you're a drug dealer, so you're kind of ruining people's lives. So that kind of makes you a bad guy. But it's like, right, he was just a drug dealer. He didn't deserve to die, you know. It's just, he was desperate for information about the lady, but also he needed a meal for Eleanor because she needed one. So there's that too. But also it's like, right, especially in Naomi's case, she's not a bad person. He's gotten to know her. She's a good person. She's a single mother now, like doing she's done so much to raise Isaiah, like, you know, despite like Frank's issues and stuff like that, obviously prior to him being killed, but, you know, and it's like, right, are you willing to take away, like, running into Isaiah when he was talking to Naomi later is what made him go like, I can't do this. It's like, right, hearing how excited Isaiah was, it's like, am I willing, just for Eleanor's sake, am I willing to cross that line? Because he even said, like, once you cross that line, there's no coming back. And it's like, am I willing to kill this innocent woman who's just a cop, trying to do the right thing? I'm the bad guy in this situation, so she's not wrong for tracking me down. I'm just doing everything I can to cover my track. And does that mean I'm willing to kill this woman who legitimately he does care for? And it's like, it's not just him. Eleanor likes her a lot too, and it's like, right, there's something special here, you know, and am I willing to take that away? So at the very least, he wanted Zeke to be that person, someone that's already in the know about everything to look after her in case he's not around, because he won't be, because he'll be arrested. It's his plan. So, but Naomi finding out about the Claire Logan element of it is like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna look into this myself. So she got the box from Mark's, and then ended up when he brought the cake over, I was like, oh boy, fingerprints. I was like, that's where we're going with this. Okay, because once again, he's not in the system, so they wouldn't have anything to, because that was something I can't realize, like, what was it, last episode or something? I was like, oh right, he's probably most likely never gotten arrested, so his prints wouldn't be in the system, because if they were, it would have popped up the moment they ran the prints on Frank's coin, but they didn't. So it's like, right, he's not in the system. They need something to compare it to. Well, she sent something in, got Ben to look into it for her. So Because that's when she started piecing it together. It's like, right, the drug dealer, that lady's connected to all this in these murders. This guy just happened to moves in kind of roughly around some of that time, plus around the time Frank, like I don't know if she directly correlated it to Frank's death, but at the very least, she's like, yo, he might be in league with some of the drugs on the street. He might be a drug dealer himself. So that's probably where she's thinking, and maybe she was probably hoping, like, maybe if he's part of this world, maybe you have some correlation connection to Frank and might have some answers. Unknowingly, he has all the answers for you about Frank. At the same time, Claire shows Eleanor Daisy, and it's like, right, Peter wasn't too happy about the non-aging stuff. He thought it was stupid, but she's like, no, it's not. And because she realized, like, wow, you actually are smart. You're very interested in, like, what I do. Because Peter's like, yeah, whatever, that nerdy shit. It's like, yeah, but Eleanor's all about that nerdy stuff. Scientific stuff, I should really clarify in that regard. But for her, you could tell, like, right, Eleanor has a very different perspective from, like, Peter. It's like, for her, she wants to be able to grow older. Like, yeah, she might not be able to completely rid herself of the vampirism, but she's hoping, like, hey, if me and Peter work together, if I'm able to at the very least start aging, that means me and Isaiah can grow old together. Because he even says later on, I don't care, like, if I'm 20 or 12, like, it won't matter. We'll still be friends. Well, I mean, you're able to have that idealism as a 12-year-old. You can't have that as an adult because that's creepy as shit and wrong. So there's that. But it kind of enters that territory of it will kind of, once again, kind of play into the original movie. Once again, that's the only version of the story I can go by, the little bit I remember of it, because she had an older caretaker, the character, right? So if I remember correctly, that caretaker was someone that knew her at a young age and just eventually looked after her all these years and grew old. If I remember that story being what it was, the original caretaker before, I want to say the boy's name is Oscar in the original, I think the book and the movie, but I think like Oscar eventually, implying that in the future, eventually the cycle will repeat itself. Oscar would get older and then she'd find someone else to, bond with, and they'd kind of fill that caretaker role when it comes to the vampire child, essentially. So that's why I was wondering, like, obviously they're making direct parallels with the Isaiah and Eleanor thing, so that's why I was wondering, when it's all said and done, will this series as a whole potentially end like that, So that was kind of like my possibility. That was my thought process just based on the teaser trailer alone. That's where my mind was about that. But either way, tangents and all that aside. Well, it's not to the point, but also to the point. Either way. The whole point is Ellie's excited about the notion of being able to go, to the point she even calls up Isaiah and is like, right, I think I will be able to get cured. I thought he'd be like, oh yeah, she's about to, start the process or whatever. I was hoping some part of that conversation would have come up, but I'm like, there's not enough there for Isaiah to really say anything to Mark. I was like, oh, please, because Mark is like, oh, can we talk? I'll tell everything about, why you've never been over to my place, what Eleanor said to Isaiah, why she said what she said, like they'd never talk again. I was like, oh, please come to the door, Isaiah, and say something to Mark and be like, oh yeah, Ellie's going through that treatment, right? It's like, wait, what? And he'll have to rush off. But it's like him saying that made it was just the nudge he needed to not do it. It's like, I gotta leave, I gotta go. So, but all the while, Claire is doing what she's doing. The moment Peter's like, oh, no worry, this can lock and unlock whenever we want it to. I'm like, oh boy. And I don't know if they actually did inject her with I guess it really was the cure. So it was a test run, because she hasn't even used it on Peter. She's only tested it on Daisy. So I believe she's the first. Because at first I was wondering, I was like, oh, could it be the drug? I'm like, I doubt they do that, because like, regardless of her being really 22, she's still technically a 12-year-old. And even in the notions of the show, drugging a 12-year-old seems kind of fucked. So I don't see that. Because I thought, well, because I thought that's what they were doing at first, but then I was like, no, because she doesn't feel any. Because she did say like, oh, you're hungry and stuff. So I do think she was kind of like numbing her pain a little bit, I think. But she didn't get like that. Like, it wasn't until like the very end that maybe she kind of got relaxed. So it might have been the anti-aging stuff. I was wondering if it was going to be the not paralytic, but like the ecstasy, like get you high, make you relax thing. It's unclear. But Eleanor's like, yeah, I gotta call my dad, let me out of this. And it's like, nope, you gotta stay here for a little while. Luckily, Mark races there, got followed by Naomi. And you're just like, oh boy. I was like, well, this could work to your benefit because you're going to need her to be there at that time to see like what's what. But she gets called by Ben. It's like, yeah, that fingerprint, it connects to Frank. And it's just like, sets her off. It's like, you killed. She now remembers like right when he first came over. And it's like, wait, this is Isaiah's stuff? Yeah. You okay? Now she's like, he was feeling guilty about it. Runs in there. Shit's popping off. And then it's like, wait, don't talk to me, Mark. I know what you did. And it's like, and Ellie's like, what's she talking about? It's like, right. She doesn't know about Frank. It's like, yeah. And that's going to be a thing she'll have to carry too when it eventually comes out, when Naomi's going to be like, yeah, you killed Frank. And it's like, Dad, you did. And he's like, I didn't have a choice. You needed a meal. And she's like, and Eleanor's going to have the guilt. It's going to make being around Isaiah extremely hard because it's like, wait, you're telling me I ate my best friend's dad? Oh, jeez, you know? So there's that. But then you had Peter like bashing Naomi's head against the floor. I'm like, oh no. I was like, is this how it's gonna go down? Luckily got Eleanor out. She I think she tossed Peter. Luckily they got Naomi out of there, but both Claire and Peter are knocked out. And it's like, man, she's not gonna make it to the hospital. I thought Mark was gonna be like, right, turn her, but it's like, no, he's like, right, I'm sorry, you know, he's apologetic. But then Eleanor's like, no, he's not going to lose another parent. I was like, wait, I was about to say, like, are we going down this route? But then he was like, not saying anything. I was like, oh, I guess we're just going to let her die. But Ellie's like, nah, no. And bites her. I'm like, yeah, okay, we here, baby. We here. I'm like, now that's going to be interesting because eventually, like, Isaiah knows about Eleanor being a vampire. So when it comes up, Naomi finding out what she is, what this has all been about, what's happened, what's transpired, like, I'm sure Mark is going to have to lock her up somewhere and like, what are you going to do about this? Like, Isaiah knows about vampires, sure, but she can't go back to her everyday life. She can no longer be, like, if she's going to be a cop, she's going to have to take the night shift. She already sent in the prints about, already sitting in Mark's prints. Once again, he hasn't been arrested, so there's nothing they can really do about that. But Ben's going to come around asking questions. Plus, her pal from the for Interpol is already heading to Canada because like there's some witnesses who've seen something about the murders that happened there. So you're like, gee, there's so many loose threads that are going to come back to bite you. And it's like, right, will Naomi like throw Mark the book? But it's like right now knowing what she is and what Mark is, now we're going to have to double up on food too because like, right, well, that's also to say because Naomi's not going to want to if she knows what it means, but that's also the rub of it all. I need to be around for my child. So are you willing to go down that route or will she die like at the beginning of a potential next season? Will she like die being like, no, I don't want anything. I'd rather die. But it's like, right. But are you comfortable leaving your child behind in that regard? Especially knowing you're the only parent they have left. Hell, like, there's also part of my brain that's like, something's going to go wrong and she's going to end up eating Ben. It's like, right, you ended up saving his life this season. Ironically, you're going to be the one that end up ending his life next time. Then there's also the Claire and Peter thing. Where does that go? Consider they know Eleanor's out there. So what do you do about that? Because they'd have to, well, Claire would probably have to hire someone to go after them and capture them because she still needs Eleanor. So once again, where's the creature that made them? Where's that person fit in the grand picture of all this? Where are they at? Are they going to pop up again? Or is that just always going to be an elusive thing in the background maybe? I have no idea. I'm in me recording this. It's still up in the air, excuse me, whether or not Showtime is going to renew this show for a second season. I was like, please, fingers crossed. When I was just looking it up, I was begging. I was like, please. And now there's no news, but I'm like, no news. It's still troubling news because I'm like, oh God, please let there be another season of this show. I really like this show and I want another season. I'm like, it's special with a cliffhanger like that. I knew from the very beginning, obviously with the structure of the show, the way they went about it. Once again, my knowledge of the movie, the little bit I remember, I was like, I already knew they were going to go in a very completely different direction. I still think there's some of the storyline beats from the original story could still align. Like I said, the ending, like from the movie at least, could still end up being Isaiah and Eleanor at some point down the road. But it's like, what do you do? Oh boy. Oh man, it's going to be so interesting to see where all this potentially could take us in a season 2. Because a season 2 would be wild. And like I said, I get the feeling like Naomi would probably be like, no, I'm not going to eat anybody. I'm just if if that happens, I'm just going to I'll just die, you know. But like I said, there's still the complication. And like, right, do you want to be there for Isaiah? Do you want Isaiah to? Well, Isaiah wanted to be a vampire. Now he has every reason to be a vampire because, like, hey, I want to be one. Now my mom's one. You're one. So we could always be together forever and ever and ever. But it's also like, right, how do you explain that to Isaiah? And especially if his mom goes missing for a while, it's like, ugh. There's just so many ways that could play out, and a lot of that is going to end up being in a very, I can see it all turning out in a very sad way. But like I said, that's only if we get a second season, which, fingers crossed, I'd love to see what you do with a season 2 of this. But really, that's all I really wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.